Thanks a lot.
Nice to see you.
Donald Trump is not some outlier in the Republican Party. His stance on Mexican immigrants is largely in line with what you hear across the GOP and particularly the conservative media, as well as from the Republican base. Fox News poll last week found that 68% of Republican primary voters believe Trump is right in his suggestion that the Mexican government is sending criminals and rapists to the U.S. Indeed, Trump's trip to survey the supposedly incredibly dangerous border is a standard stop for GOP politicians, including former Texas Governor Rick Perry, who, despite harshly criticizing Trump's rhetoric, posed for this tough guy picture at the border last summer with Sean Hannity. And we saw the results today when the GOP-led House passed what Democrats derisively termed the Donald Trump Act, a bill to withhold some federal grants to so-called sanctuary cities. Those are cities that have policies that don't force their local law enforcement to also police federal immigration laws. This afternoon, moments after he cast a vote against that bill, I asked Representative Beto O'Rourke, a Democrat from Texas who represents a border district, to respond to Trump's comments today.
You're talking about a danger. You keep saying that there's a danger, but the crime along the border is down. What danger are you talking about?
Oh, there's great danger with the illegals, and we're just discussing that, but we have a tremendous danger on the border with the illegals coming in.
Tremendous danger along the border. You live on the border. You represent the border. Is he right?
No, he's not. El Paso, Texas, the community I represent, is the safest city in America, and it has been for the last 4 years. And what I try to share with people, and I want to share it with Mr. Trump, is that is in large part because of, and not in spite of, the large number of immigrants who come to El Paso, and the fact that we're conjoined with Ciudad Juarez in Mexico, forming the largest binational community anywhere in the world. And we're also not an anomaly. You look at Laredo, Texas, you look at San Diego, California, or you look at an immigrant city like New York City, they're all far safer than the average American city that's not on the U.S.-Mexico border. So he's got the facts all wrong on this one, but I'm glad he's at the border, and maybe he'll learn the truth while he's there.
Well, this is an important point, too, because I've had you on this program to talk about this before. How different is what Donald Trump is saying from what your Republican colleagues and conservatives have been saying for years? It doesn't strike me to be different at all.
You know, it's interesting. I was at an event last night with the wife of a senator, and we were talking about Trump, and I was, of course, saying this is ridiculous what he's saying about Mexicans and Mexican Americans. And she told me, listen, he speaks for a lot of us in this country who are genuinely afraid of Mexico, Mexicans, and the border. So what he says resonates, and there's a reason that he's polling at the top of the field in the Republican primary right now. My challenge and your challenge as a journalist is to make sure that we share the facts and the truth about the border, and that the U.S. side of the U.S.-Mexico border is safer than the average American city. That last year we had 480,000 apprehensions, and that's with the asylees and migrants from Central America. 480,000 last year compared to 1.6 million 15 years ago. The border has never been safer than it is today. We've never spent more money. We've never had more border patrol. El Paso, the largest city on the border, has never been safer. So any fact that Mr. Trump would choose to look at would contradict completely the narrative that he's telling. But unfortunately, what he says resonates with anxieties and fears that people have about the border, about Mexico, about Mexican Americans, which is absolutely unfortunate. But I think this is an issue where, given enough rope, he's going to do far more damage to himself, to the party, and to that whole narrative than I could ever change by the facts that I'm sharing with you. So I think this is one where we're happy to allow this to play out and for Mr. Trump to continue to talk and to stand at the top of the field for the Republicans in their primary challenge.
Final question here. He started with this comment and his announcement about how Mexico is sending criminals and rapists. There was a horrific murder in San Francisco shortly thereafter, allegedly committed by a Mexican immigrant. There has then been the conservative media and your Republican colleagues have taken up the torch of making this a front and center issue. You just came from a vote. What was that vote on? And how do you understand the continuum between what Mr. Trump is saying and what your colleagues on the floor of the United States Congress are doing?
You know, as my colleague Luis Gutierrez said on the floor recently, you know, Mr. Trump's only been a presidential candidate for a few weeks, and he already has a bill on the floor of the House of Representatives. This is an anti-sanctuary cities, so-called, bill that passed largely on Republican votes. I don't think there were any Democratic votes, or if there were just a few. And it's a solution in search of a problem. I've already shared with you how safe the border and border communities are and immigrant-rich communities are compared to the national average. But when you talk to the experts on this, the sheriff of El Paso County, for example, or big city police chiefs, they tell us that they don't want to be enforcing federal immigration law because they want the cooperation of every single person in the community in which they're trying to keep people safe, prevent crimes from happening, or solve crimes that have already been committed. And when the local population or some segment thereof fears that law enforcement is going to enforce federal immigration law or try to determine their immigration status, they don't come forward as witnesses. They don't help prevent crimes or solve those crimes that have been committed. So I defer to the experts, to the law enforcement officials, and they say a bill like this one is a bad idea.
Congressman Beto O'Rourke, always eminently sensible on these issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Still ahead, 2016 posturing from the two presidential candidates who also sit on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee.